Hello out there, my ghouls and goblins. Taylor here, your casual crypt keeper, and boy do I have something for you today. What kind of secrets do you think your government is hiding? Do you think they're hidden to keep us in the dark, or is it for our safety? Well, today we're gonna dive into some of the craziest conspiracies out there, so let's get ready to get our X-Files on as we jump into the top 5 unsettling classified documents the Pentagon never wanted you to see. You let me know down below which of these shocked you the most. Number 5, Project Acoustic Kitty. Have you ever tried to train a cat? I have too, and let me tell you from experience, it is not particularly easy. I can barely get them to agree to use like a litter box, let alone complete a task. But that very well could be because I am just one man and I don't have the government funding and might of the US military behind me. I'm sure if I had a little government funding, I could get these cats jumping through hoops and waiting more than 5 minutes to start screaming once their food dish is empty. So this is Project Acoustic Kitty, a CIA program that proposed the transformation of house cats into next generation cybernetically enhanced super spies. No, really. It sounds like it's the plot to a direct to VHS kids movie, but it was a real project. A team of animal behaviorists worked alongside Robin Michelson, who was one of the inventors of the human cochlear implant, with the hope of making one for cats. They would wire a cat with a battery, a compartment in its rib cage, and a wire running all the way to its inner ear. They believed they could control the cat's movements through ultrasonic sound, and they could use a transmitter also implanted in the cat to listen in on conversations. I don't know what kind of conversations they think a cat is getting up to, but cats mostly just lay in the sun. I feel like that's one of the bigger problems with this project. Now, whether or not this actually got past the drawing board and they actually RoboCopped a cat is up for some debate. An ex-CIA officer grimly claims, and kind of hilariously in the darkest way, that the original Acoustic Kitty was struck by a taxi after they took him out of a van and he took the Rainbow Road up to heaven to spy for the CIA on angels. A different report claims that the original cat lived out a happy life, he pursued journalism, and then was found dead in his apartment after publishing some anti-CIA sentiment. That's just a joke, don't look that up. Now, the only declassified document regarding the project is a redacted memorandum titled Views on Trained Cats, and it references this: cats cannot be similarly trained to approach, and then redacted. That's all we know, really. To quote Charlie Kelly from Always Sunny, cats do not abide by the laws of nature, D. Anyone who owned a cat should have been able to tell the CIA that teaching them to do anything that serves anyone but themselves is a lost cause. And if you're looking for more funny videos about cats, we don't really have a lot of that. That's elsewhere on the internet. But if you're looking for scary things, cryptids, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, aliens, true crime, fake crime, just about anything freaky above the sun and below it, we've got lots of that in spades. So click on through, hit subscribe, and hit that little bell, and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But do that at the end of this video for me, would you kindly? We got way more secrets coming up for you. Number 4, Henry Shields' flying saucer. And one of these should probably be about aliens, right? The rest of them are gonna be like secret CIA projects and stuff, but I feel like I should include just one alien thing to keep it a little fun and fresh and flirty, and also because I know you love the aliens. I know what drives the clicks around here. So let's talk a little about a declassified document regarding unidentified flying saucers coming to us from 1976. Captain Henry Shields of the US Air Force began his report by typing, "Sometime in his career, each pilot can be expected to encounter strange, unusual happenings which will never be adequately or entirely explained by logic or subsequent investigation. This story will be filed away and possibly forgotten, but it makes for interesting and possibly disturbing reading," which is a great way of prefacing, letting you know that whatever he's about to talk about is insane. The account begins describing a clear morning. The Iranian Air Force received a series of calls of unknown airborne objects described as bird-like or flying saucer-like, or like a brightly lit helicopter. Now, nothing should have been in the airspace at the time, and so an F-4 fighter jet was dispatched. As the plane followed, it made contact with a flying saucer-like object, and they lost all communications with ground control until they moved away from this strange object. They sent a second F-4 fighter after it, but that also experienced a power loss when it tried to fire at it, as if there was some sort of like tech field, some EMP field blocking them. The crews reported they saw something detach from the saucer and fly towards towards the plane at top speed, but luckily was avoided. Now it's unclear what happened, but the saucer escaped, and the crews of the planes reported seeing something land from the UFO, lighting up an area of the lake. They investigated at a nearby residence where the owners claimed they heard loud noises and very bright lights. So what was it? What was it they encountered then? It was far too early for this to be any sort of drone technology, really, and there's not really many other options for me to say. I think it was an alien, and who am I to say that that's not true? Number 3, Operation Paperclip. Ooh, this one's a doozy. In the waning years of World War II, around 1945, the US was beginning to worry that they needed an edge against the Soviet Union in the coming future, and wanted to take every single advantage they could find at their disposal for advancements in technology, even if that meant picking up from some seriously dubious sources. It was called Operation Paperclip, and it was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from Germany's National Socialist Party to come work for the United States and forget about all of that other stuff. When large numbers of German scientists began to be discovered in April of 1945, the US set up a few overnight makeshift interrogation centers in Paris and in Frankfurt. This early draft of the project was called Operation Overcast, and this initial idea was that this was going to help end the war against the Japanese, and it would immediately benefit post-World War II research. Eventually, the project got renamed from Overcast to Paperclip in reference to how the officers would attach a little paperclip to the folders of the rocket experts they wanted to pluck and bring over to America. Now, in its conception, the project's first goal and idea behind it was this thinking that somebody had to take these scientists, right? And if America didn't pluck all of these morally gray scientists, somebody else would have. And they feared that they would have fled to Argentina or Egypt, which had been known to be sympathetic to German National Socialism. And I guess it was better if they were there where they could be observed than somewhere else where they could do who knows what. The Soviets actually had a similar project to this idea, mirroring it, calling it Operation Ozofekham, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, occurring during 1946, and that's a whole different video. Now, these scientists blended into American life, and they got themselves some cushy jobs at lofty positions. You would not believe some of the places some of these guys went. A number of them went to NASA. Here's a terrible fact for you. A great deal of the advancements and knowledge we have about rockets and spacesuits and spaceflight technology can all be directly traced to members of the project and former members of a certain nationalist socialist party. Number 2, MK Ultra. If you're like one of the 1.4 billion people who've turned into Netflix for Stranger Things, you're probably a big fan of all the wacky stuff that goes on in Hawkins. Aliens from another dimension, Steve Harrington's hair, psychic super soldiers. It's fun to see such fantastical concepts on the screen, you know? That kind of stuff only exists in TV. And of course in the grim reality where the CIA really did try to develop brainwashing, mind control, and astral projection technology. Now, the most infamous among them by far is Project MK Ultra, sometimes known as Project Monarch. To begin to even truly scrape the surface of this subject, we need a lot more time than the 2-minute window we've got here, but we can cover the absolute basics about this super duper incredibly very real thing the American government was very involved in. Look it up after this video, please. I can't discuss everything, but participants of the MK Ultra trials were put through unimaginable torment, electrocution, unknowingly dosing subjects with illicit narcotics. Now, many MK Ultra documents have been destroyed over the years by the CIA's direction, but what documents that have been declassified gave us a lot of insight into the program. See, the CIA was worried again that the Soviets were making better leaps in technology over them and were winning all sorts of landmark races. So they were doing everything they could to get their edge over the Soviets, like we talked about in the last point. And one of these forays was interrogation technology. They believed that with the aid of certain illicit substances, some mental gymnastics, they could outright dominate and control another human being's brain. The project's goal outright was stated to enhance the abilities of individuals to withstand coercion, produce shock, confusion, and amnesia, to create materials which will cause the victim to age faster, slower, to promote illogical thinking, and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited. So it's not quite 11 and the Upside Down, but it is just as cruel. Now, interestingly, a plot point in the show was that 11's mother was kind of cruelly experimented on. She didn't really know what she was signing up for at all and was left ravaged by the experience afterwards. This is really not that different from what actually happened, where a grand majority of the test subjects for MK Ultra Project Monarch were people like homeless people, convicts, or people with nowhere else left to turn who are willing to turn a blind eye to some seriously dubious experimentation for very little in the way of compensation. And number 1, the gateway experience. Now, as I just said, this is far from the only bizarre mental training the CIA ever dipped their fingers in. Have you ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats? Probably not. It's an indie movie from the early 2000s. It's great. George Clooney and Obi-Wan Kenobi is in. I forget his real name, Ewan McGregor. The movie talks about a secret division of the US Army that was experimenting with expanding their consciousness. Sounds pretty far out and groovy, right, man? Well, enter the gateway experience. It sounds like weaponized hippies, and it kind of was. The goal was that subjects would be able to harness the full extent of their brain, and that with enough practice, subjects would be able to release the control of their consciousness from this mortal shell, from this meat prison that keeps us all, and release us out into these planes of existence that you and I are just far too feeble to ever understand. Now, the final landmark for this project, the final idea, was mental time travel, which sounds wild, but I don't know when you guys are gonna realize you can't make up stuff weirder than actual things the CIA has done. This idea is that once your consciousness existed outside of meat space, you could access your memories and relive them and view them from a third-person perspective of an outsider. You'd be able to take in stock of your surroundings and gather data and intel no one else could have. So, you know, right now, I'm looking into a camera, I'm talking into this thing, but later on in the future, I can imagine myself and see myself behind the camera, watch myself making all these mistakes from a different perspective. Now, I'd love to be able to explain the intricacies of what this project involved, but I only have so much time to do, so please do some homework after this video if you're interested in this subject. It's really fascinating. The idea was that with a melange of binaural beats, guided meditation, this would affect the flow of your blood, alter your heartbeat, and start to awaken the brain in the ways we don't use it, get that third eye going. They said if your brain is like a light, the process of the gateway experience was to try to focus that light into a laser beam. So I'm sure you're eager, wondering if it worked. Officially, as far as we know, no. No one was able to mentally time travel. Project director Robert Monroe found himself frustrated that he didn't have enough time to produce results, and maintained that if he had a few more years, he would have produced something groundbreaking. Of course, that's if you believe the project was abandoned. For all we know, he could have already perfected it, gone back in time, and fixed it all the way back then. Well, my ghouls and goblins, that's all she wrote for this one. Creep on, creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one, so long as the CIA don't shove me in a van. Take it easy.